I hope people weren't waiting that long.
No, that's fine.
I'm just glad you watched Space Jam.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of you.
I
Look
want
at
to
you.
write like an academic paper about it to get my thoughts out there on it.
Don't
There's a
watch
lot
the
there.
second one then.
No, I won't. Well, the second one is like totally that terrible part of the
It's
first
an
one,
advertisement
abstracted.
for HBO Max.
Right.
The first one is pure
Right.
and really, really short.
Right.
Like, what is it, like 60 minutes? If you
Yeah.
take out the Jordan highlights, because there's Jordan highlights at the beginning, Jordan highlights
Right.
at the
Right.
end.
Right.
If
Right.
you take those out of the first Space Jam, it's like 30 minutes long.
And by the way, I think the most inspired thing about the first Space Jam after viewing it is the way that it weaves into reality. Like it's a totally fantastic tale about a fantasy world, but that it attaches up to the actual story of Michael Jordan.
All right, I got to switch this up. Okay, let's do this thing in 3, 2, 1. No Julio Jones, no problem for the Atlanta Falcons, right? And for Matt Ryan, because, well, Bloom, they've kind of dealt with this before.
They have. They did last year. It's a different year. You know, it's a new team. It's a new regime. And this is going to be, certainly for fantasy football, interesting to watch, and just in general, interesting to watch. Before we just jump right in to the Falcons, I do think we just recognize again the Julio Jones Falcons era. You know, he's like iconic player. You know, reached the level of like Owens and Moss, of a wide receiver just changing the game. So this team turns the page. And I also have to say, by the way, Cecil, living down here in New Orleans, the hatred, or at least the hatred in the context of the rivalry of Atlanta, is even more bitter than Pittsburgh and Baltimore, if you can believe that.
Well, the cities hate each other. That's a long story. We open up a can of worms there. But yeah,
Right.
and with the Julio, you missed one, Bloom.
Mm-hmm.
You missed one, saying the level of Owens and Moss. I'll talk about the guy that just went in yesterday. Megatron, man.
Sure.
He's that level. Like, we'll see him in a gold jacket. We know that.
Yeah. Good trade, Tom Dimitrov. So what's the answer? How do you turn the page? Arthur Smith, right? And Terry Fontenot.
Arthur.
And I talked about this on a recent show. Maybe being an offensive genius in the NFL is just using what you have. If that's all Arthur Smith did in Tennessee, and he has a lot in Atlanta. So this is an exciting offense to look forward to. I think that they have an offensive line that is getting more mature, hopefully ready to gel. You know, you have the leadership of Arthur Smith. You, of course, have the addition of Kyle Pitts and Mike Davis in the backfield. They didn't really have much in the backfield last year. Anyway, Ryan for fantasy, again, maybe more interesting in your 2-quarterback superflex leagues where you're considering him as an upside quarterback. 2, again, if Arthur Smith is an offensive genius, or if he just uses these elements, then there's plenty of them to use in this offense. And they're going to be playing from behind. The defense is still under construction. Dean Pease over there. So Matt Ryan is not an interesting quarterback, but it's still an interesting team to talk about.
Interesting team, and that's the thing with Matt Ryan. It's like, preseason watch list. We're like watching for situations and guys, and they're like, nah. Okay, speaking of meh, AJ McCarron behind him,
right?
Felipe Franks, who I did see down at the Senior Bowls, got some movement.
Right.
You know, got a nice arm. So preseason watch list. I don't think he turns into anything. He wasn't overly impressive. I mean, it was Mac Jones. Basically, it was his show down there. But Felipe Franks, I'll give him a look.
Yeah, Franks has an arm, so you just start there, work backwards. McCarron gives me an opportunity to mention again, Cease. I just like to get these things out there into the atmosphere. AJ McCarron wasn't signed until the day after the first round. And when Fontenot and Smith were asked, would you have signed McCarron if the first round had gone differently? They just kind of, what do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about. Well, we just do what we do when we do it. So Trey Lance could have been an Atlanta Falcon. And I guess every day that passes sees something that may make Falcons fans go,
oh, why wasn't it like that? Why wasn't it like that? By the way, I congratulate you this morning, Bloom. We were officially 3 minutes into the YouTube stream when you mentioned Kyle Pitts. So thank you. Thank you for that. I know we're doing Atlanta. You're like, this is your
really
Brandon
that should
Marshall.
Be the lead-in. The lead-in from
Let's
that
just
Trey
skip to the tight ends.
Right. The lead-in on the Trey Lance talk. That lead-in from Trey Lance should be to Kyle Pitts. You know, like Kyle Pitts make Falcons fans not feel sad that
and
they
it's tied into the Julio talk as well. Right. Like it's a different weapon.
Right. But, we're turning the page from the quarterback still, there, Mike Davis. And when we look at the running backs, see, I'm about to put out the all roll aids team. Again, nod to Joe Wright. And I think Mike Davis is one of those players, like if he's still there in the 5th or 6th round, you think, well, he's going to get the touches. Well, he was productive last year. But at the same time, something in you says, nah, I just don't want to make that leap with him.
And that's the thing with Mike Davis. You're like, okay, what do you do for an encore? Do you stay healthy? Do you stay motivated? Davis was always talented at South Carolina, was always a very talented player. And then he just kind of, didn't pan out. Work ethic questions surrounded him. And then it all hit last year with Carolina. And now he's in Atlanta, and fantasy GM should have some concerns.
He could be a hit. I mean, he could get 3, 4, 5 catches a game. This could be an offense that's efficient, that executes well. He could get enough goal line carries to be, if you get him in the 5th round, use him as your running back too, he helps your team. He was helping teams win. But there's also this downside, or see, it's just a scenario we've seen all too often in fantasy football, where when a player who doesn't have the credentials this far into their career, like Justin Forsett, right? Even if they hit a small peak, they don't sustain it. And that was the thing with Mike Davis, right? I think it was his junior year, he would have been considered a much more highly touted back in the draft. Right. And then senior year didn't look as good. And that's what you worry about. And that's why you want to know who's behind him.
Right. And that's why you want to know Cordarrelle Patterson, who is behind him. And here's the thing, Bloom, you mentioned Arthur Smith, right? Mm-hmm. And is it revolutionary like Bill Belichick? Don't tell me what he doesn't do. Right. Just tell me what he does do, and I'm going to do that. It seems like Arthur Smith is like that, and not even from the Belichick tree. But there's Quadri Olison, there's Cordarrelle Patterson behind him. Throw everybody in. I mean, we're all waiting for Dante Foreman to be something. Wasn't that always the case? And Javian Hawkins there as well. So some interesting names, but Patterson's the one I'm fixated on.
Yeah, Patterson's interesting, especially in leagues where you get return yards. It's getting close to the time where Devin Hester can go into the Hall of Fame, right? And it makes you think about Cordarrelle Patterson and what he adds to this team. But there are names to think about here. Quadri Olison. Look, Quadri Olison, Dante Foreman. These are backs with no subtlety at all. But that's okay. Arthur Smith, I know how to use that, right? I know how to make that into something our offense can use. Smith knows him from last year, Foreman. So that signing, Cecil, is a good thing about the schedule, right? We wouldn't have talked about Dante Foreman a week ago. But now he's there in Atlanta's camp. And again, Olison was getting some praise in the offseason. You have Hawkins is more of a scat back. Huntley is also a downhill back, although maybe, and I don't know what to make out of the Foreman signing. Is it about Davis? Is it about Olison? Is it about Caleb Huntley, who maybe they were looking as a 3rd running back or a 4th running back? Or is it just that Smith likes Foreman and wants to see what he can contribute to this team? Remember, another Achilles tear. So a lot of things in motion. And again, if this is a good offense, I think it's possible that Arthur Smith could make this a good offense. It's not a bad offense. He's not inheriting a bad offense. Then the running back position could produce more than it did last year.
Look at this, Jordan McNamara in the chat room. Jordan, what's up, dude? By the way, Mark brings up this. Hey, Arthur Smith can do it. These players can do it. We're about ready to get to the wide receivers, but that offensive line, a little bit of a concern.
Alex Mack is in San Francisco now. You want that? Lindstrom.
Remember his duck walk
McGarry.
Talk? I'll never forget his duck walk talk at the Senior Bowl. Drink up and enjoy your festivities, which is the preseason watch list. It is the Audible. That's right. The Footballguys.com podcast. Cecil, Lammey, Sigmund, Bloom. And before we get to those wide receivers, make sure you download the Football Guys mobile app today if you haven't already. It can be used on all smartphones and gives you all the same tools that you'd find on our website, our new website, footballguys.com. Our Draft Dominator app will make sure that you have an edge above your teammates by customizing the advice specific to your team. Download today so Football Guys can help you win. That's our Football Guys mobile apps. Check us out in your app store. And, of course, footballguys.com. Wide receivers, very interesting. Everybody just stay healthy. But as we gave Julio Jones his own section, Bloom,
sure,
I feel like we should do the same for Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, we should. The clear number 1, and you're excited because of the extra volume. It could get an inordinate volume, right? We have to remember, there's not a rule. We're up to 17 games now, Cease. There's not a rule that a player is not allowed to get 200 targets. Like the league puts a cap on it. Calvin Ridley can be that central to this passing game because he's just so consistent. He plays at a high speed and executes consistently. And every time we heap praise on Ridley, Cease, I want to go back to a couple of things. One, he was old for a rookie. And two, he had those leaps, right? He had like lackluster leaps. And really, a first-round pick? He's not an explosive leaper. He's old for a rookie. And maybe this is just an Alabama exception, right? Because just really good players can be older rookies because you have to climb the ladder against other future pros there, and you might not get the playing time. They break a lot of rules. But Calvin Ridley, you're looking at in the second round. And see, this is tough, right? Because you can make a case for Ridley. You can make a case for DK Metcalf. You can make a case for Justin Jefferson. Oh, that shoulder's fine. You can make a case for A.J. Brown in the second round. And then there's running backs you can make a case for too, like Joe Mixon or Antonio Gibson. So this second round, there's a lot of promise. There's a lot of players who can easily deliver first round value, Ridley being one of them. It's where really, I think, fantasy leagues are going to start to separate themselves is how much you make out of your second round pick, and Ridley is absolutely in contention.
Yeah, treat your second rounder like you treat your first rounder. And I think the second round is so mixed up this year, Bloom, because the first round it's like Golden Corral. You're just coming in, you're like, oh, buffet over here, a little over here. What do I want? So, AD, and it's always don't draft by ADP. Like, look at ADP, notice it, understand it, but don't draft by it because your league is different.
And I think going back to ADP, you just kind of throw out the window with your second round pick. If it's somebody that's going in the late second round, but you have clarity that's who you want, then Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm not going to knock anybody for taking the second round pick that they want because there's a value there that is like a plateau. And I could easily see Cease going into an auction league this year and thinking, I don't want a first round pick, I want 2 or 3 second round picks, and spending your money that way.
Let everyone make your choices, and then I'm going to scoop them up. I know in some of my leagues that I've dabbled in already, Bloom, I'm going to take Najee Harris if I'm at the turn.
Right. Another one in the second round that could easily go in the early second or late first.
I was going to say I'd take him in the late first just to say I told you so.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the rest of the Atlanta wide receivers. Now, there's interesting things to look at with Russell Gage, with almighty Zacchaeus, and I hope I got that right. I think those two, and here's the God's honest truth. Chat room brought it up as well. Kyle Pitts is the wide receiver too.
Yeah.
But before we get to Pitts and the glory that is his game, let's talk about Gage and Zacchaeus first before we get to the backup guys, including an Arizona State guy that everyone needs to draft in Dynasty.
Sure. Gage is interesting. See, every time I go back to Gage, I'm a little more interested because he's the number 2 receiver. Yeah, and he can catch 90 balls this year. Again, if this team throws 600 times, he can catch 90 balls. And that's not in some doomsday scenario for Pitts or Ridley or something like that either. So Gage has really come on. Remember, he was originally drafted as an athlete. When he was drafted, is he a cornerback, is he a wide receiver? We'll see. And he's turned into a very good wide receiver. Now he has that starting job. He's dependable. He has the chemistry carrying over with Ryan. Got Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus had a long touchdown last year. Zacchaeus absolutely is going from undrafted free agent to number 3 receiver. This isn't a situation, Cease, like Minnesota, where it's a kind of number 3 receiver by default. Zacchaeus has definitely played his way up. Tazae Sharp, who Arthur Smith knows also is there. And then Frank Darby, I'll hand the mic back to you, but Darby, he can make things happen in the downfield passing game.
Get ready again. Wes in the chat room is going to be like, oh my God, the best player at the Senior Bowl was Frank Darby. Sorry. That's the way it went. And in Dynasty, I'm scooping him everywhere I possibly can. The guy made crazy catches. The guy had sideline awareness, fantastic body control. And he's one of those receivers, like, reminds me in a way of how Antonio Brown was a little overlooked, Bloom. And maybe it's just the Sun Devil on his helmet, people not expecting much from him, people being disappointed in former Sun Devils like N'Keal Harry or whatever. Not even close. I mean, not even the same type of player. So Frank Darby, yes, please. I believe in our draft recaps, Bloom, I was going on and on about Darby as well. Yeah, that's still the case. You've got Pitts, I've got Darby, different levels, different production levels as rookies, to be sure. But Darby's one of those guys in Dynasty. I sit on and I wait, like Daenerys with her eggs, just waiting.
Yeah, I like that. Our dragons. Now, can I talk about my dragon?
Yes.
Look, see, I'm actually, this is things that go to my head. Everybody encourages us way too much, both of us. I get asked to come on shows now to make the case for Kyle Pitts. Oh, come on. That's self-indulgent, right?
Right.
So my brain is constantly, the wheels are turning of like other ways to try to get the point across, because I don't think I was higher on Kyle Pitts than other draft talent evaluators, right? Like I wasn't the highest on Kyle Pitts back in January or something like that. But I feel like I have to push back against this rookie tight ends don't do anything narrative. And I've already laid down the basics. First non-quarterback taken, first tight end taken in the top 5. But see, here's another way, and try to make this a little more fantasy-centric, right? Because we're willing, there was a question in the chat room, how early is too early to take Kyle Pitts? I've been taking him in the 3rd round. Every now and then, there's somebody else I like J.K. Dobbins in the 3rd round. I'll chance Pitts falling to the 4th round, and I take him in the 4th round. So Jamar Chase, let's take Jamar Chase as an example. See, Jamar Chase is going 5th round, right? So, and nobody bats an eye at that. I mean, it's special that he's reunited with Joe Burrow, but the idea is we can imagine, look what Justin Jefferson did last year. We can easily imagine a wide receiver as a rookie mattering in a big way in fantasy football, like being one of those league winners, okay? Right. And Chase is going in the 4th, 5th round on the promise of, and we can say that Chase and Pitts were roughly equal as prospects, right? I think that Atlanta made the right call that Pitts was worth more. But here's the thing, right? Cease. If Pitts was drafted as a wide receiver, if the Falcons had announced Kyle Pitts wide receiver, he would probably have roughly the same ADP as Chase, right?
Yeah.
Because we can easily imagine a big, fast, athletic, skilled guy making hay right away at the wide receiver position. But because they announced him as a tight end, now we're fading him. Now we're saying, well, that decision changes essentially what we have here, when what we're hearing out of Atlanta, both in the offseason and in camp, is that they're moving him all around the formation. He's a weapon. He's not a, put your hand in the dirt tight end that's going to line up in line very often. And he's certainly not an ordinary tight end prospect. He's not even an ordinary football prospect.
Dude, before the draft, J.C. Horn told me he's not a tight end.
Yeah.
He's a wide receiver.
So we're letting this tight end designation completely cloud it. But here's the twist, Cease. The fact that he's announced at a tight end means that his potential in fantasy football grows exponentially. Doing number 1 wide receiver things at the tight end position could potentially be the most valuable commodity in fantasy football, right? And here we are where we're actually holding that against him. So he's going to be emphasized. He has the goods to deliver. I think that this is just one of those things that is an automatic check mark for me in my drafts, because I think that we've got the perception of the potential in this situation skewed by referring to a whole group of players that are nothing like Kyle Pitts.
There's nothing like him. Nothing like him. And immediately cementing himself as one of the top playmakers in the league. It could happen. Why are people afraid of that, Bloom? I mean, this is a large question. Like, go meta on this if you want.
Sure,
brother.
Yeah.
Because we like to do that. Hell, you were just doing that on Space Jam when we started the show. But like, so many people are afraid of potential or afraid to see things differently. Again, like, think about it. Like, there's fear is our most powerful motivator, right? That's why things are put out to scare us. And the scary thing is Kyle Pitts is a tight end, and tight ends, rookies don't do this.
Right.
So there's a lot of fantasy analysts, let's use the air quotes there, that just go, oh, I'm not going to do this.
Well, I don't want to predict something that's going to happen that hasn't happened before. And I get it. I mean, that's usually the right call. Again, you want to be a meteorologist, just say the weather's going to be the same as yesterday. Like, you're going to be right 80% of the time, right? So I get it. I get saying, hey, the weather's going to be the same. But if you see the clouds on the horizon, then you know that there might be something different coming tonight or tomorrow. And the other thing is maybe this is just my personality, or I keep coming back to this idea. I think it was Kevin O'Brien. Love him. the fantasy football engineer. And after a show we were talking about it. And I talked about how, whatever. See, so what we do is self-indulgent. I'm going to go meta. I'm really going meta now. What we just do is very self-indulgent. Again, people encourage us, and they just let us, we're lucky. It's very easy to do what we do because of that. And I think that it's mental health. That's what Kevin told me. What we do is help people, our own mental health for sure. And
you told me that years ago.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We help our mental health and other people's mental health. And I think majorly how we accomplish that is this little enclosed environment where everything fades into the background and we can just get lost in something. And that in and of itself is therapeutic just because we all have so much weighing on us. And one of the things in fantasy football that both can be profitable and is something I think that really hits the mental health value of fantasy football is letting yourself be open to becoming exuberant about something, about a player, about a team, about an attack. When you watch something and it just gets you excited, you just see something like burgeoning, like the bleeding edge, something popping, something becoming, like what it's been like to watch Patrick Mahomes. And if you're willing to be open to see where those possibilities are and you get your fantasy football positions on them, then it really adds to the unburdening of that transcendental play. When we watch that play and just in that moment, all the weight that is on us on a day-to-day basis disappears because we've become part of that. And I think Kyle Pitts, for me, he's that guy this year.
It's okay to let your freak flag fly. It's okay to dance. It's okay to be excited. It's okay to be overly excited.
Yeah,
right?
like it's the thing, right? Like teaching.
It's the Puritans in us.
Like dance. Like don't worry about what you look like when you dance, because if somebody is watching you dance and judging you, then they're the loser because they're missing out on the chance to dance. Just dance.
Right. Let it take over. Right. Let go.
Yeah.
Let that energy take over. I don't want to talk about Hayden Hurst. Let's just talk about dancing.
Right. Well, hey, Hayden Hurst's mental health, right? He's been to the brink. So,
he's at the yips.
Yeah, and he's also talked about suicide and things like that. And it can be a 2 tight end offense. That's the other thing. This can definitely be a 2 tight end offense. And Hurst can, as a secondary tight end, remember Arthur Smith, a tight end coach, so it's not that difficult. And also, before we turn the page to, I'll mention Jared Pinkney, who is still coming into the league as an undrafted free agent, but a receiving tight end, and he's stuck with the team. Again, this could be a 2 tight end offense. So I'll watch what he does in the preseason.
Keep watching. It is the Audible, the preseason watch list. We are going through the NFC South. Cecil, Lammey, and Sigmund Bloom here, and that is a wrap for our Atlanta Falcons show. But we got 3 more teams, and I apparently have to go get a hat. So let's all go to the lobby. Isn't that what you sing, Bloom? And please, for the love of God, Christian McCaffrey, just stay healthy. If he does, we know what that means for your fantasy team. If he doesn't, well, let's talk about it next. All right, give me 1 second. I got to get a hat. These guys are calling out my hat game.
The girl from Ipanema. Cease.
All right.
Cease,
I'm back.
Back in action. Cease. You know what we watched later after Space Jam? Like
what's
something that's Space Jam. So if I say the first movie to really explore the cartoon real world mashup?
Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, we watched Roger Rabbit.
Please, Eddie.
That's great. Charles Fleischer, I think, did the voice. Yeah.
All right, let's do this thing. And we will go on in 3, 2, 1. What does it mean for your team when Sam Darnold is your quarterback? Well, I know what it means for your fantasy team, Bloom. It means giddy up, partner. I ain't drafting that guy.
Yeah. Carolina, right? Nothing could be finer. See, so I guess at this moment in the preseason watch list, when we do the big picture for the team, are we sold on this team? Are we sold on Matt Rule? What has Matt Rule done to make us think we should err on the side of giving him the benefit of the doubt?
Nothing.
Sam Darnold.
That's the same thing I say when people say Teddy Bridgewater sucks. I'm like, well, he's not great, but does anyone think Matt Rule's a good coach?
Right.
Like, seriously.
And Sam Darnold, likewise. Now, you can make this argument for Darnold that it's just getting out from under the thumb of Adam Gase, but Ryan Tannehill showed more than Darnold did. And some of that could be, again, Darnold was in a crumbling franchise, a crumbling team, but you're still betting on something that hasn't happened, I think, in both Rule and Darnold. So that's the backdrop for this whole offense. And again, Darnold and what did they do? They drafted Terrace Marshall. Curtis Samuel left in free agency. Of course, they're going to get Christian McCaffrey back. Who knows how important that was, how the season could have gone differently if he was there the whole time.
Right.
How good for Teddy Bridgewater, right? And then the left side of the line is a question. This team had assets, and they didn't really, again, J.C. Horn, you mentioned, that was their first round pick. It was a great offensive tackle class. They got Brady Christensen like in the third round. So they did not dip into that top tier. Because even Rashawn Slater, would we be talking about this potential for this offense a little differently if they had? It's going to be fun to talk about the Chargers, right?
Yes.
So, Darnold, what's there for fantasy football? I don't even know. I mean, for 2 quarterback leagues, he's an upside quarterback 3 to take. But again, for any of these teams, even if we don't care about Sam Darnold for fantasy football as far as drafting him, we still care about him for what he's going to do to the value of the other players. Although it seems like nobody can do anything to change the value of Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, that's just because that's so awesome. Let's get through its preseason watch list.
Yeah.
I know the owner of the Carolina Panthers really wanted Will Grier. Remember when he tried to make Will Grier a thing and Norv Turner quit, basically, because of that?
My son took over.
Yeah. It's no, not going to do that. Not going to throw in Will Grier, but it's preseason watch list. I'll see if he's learned anything. PJ Walker's there. I like PJ. Yeah. I don't think he does much, but I like the guy.
Just keep in mind in 2 quarterback leagues to monitor who wins the backup job, because Darnold has been known to miss time, even with things other than mononucleosis, which he did miss time for that. And also, if Darnold falters, I know the team picked up his 5th-year option, but you never know. One of these quarterbacks could get a look later in the season if they're out of the playoff hunt. So just something to know. And Walker, he didn't look overwhelmed. He didn't look out of place on an NFL field. Grier, at least the indications are he might, but he still hung around.
Yeah. Okay. I thought I had mono once for an entire year. It turns out I was just really bored. Why do we talk in movie quotes? Either way, let's talk about Christian McCaffrey. What's the movie quote that best sums up Christian McCaffrey this year? The force is strong with this one. Like, it's Christian McCaffrey. Like, I'll be back. Yeah. It's all we need. It's all we need. We know what he's going to do if he's healthy and can stay healthy. And I don't see that as a concern, or it's not shying me away, Bloom, in any mocks that I've done where I've had number 1 overall. Yeah. It's Christian McCaffrey.
In a Superflex league, that's where it gets interesting. In a Superflex league, is it Patrick Mahomes? That's where it gets interesting, but that's it. And even last year, he was still producing at the level that you expected him to, and there's no reason to think that's going to change this year. Again, even if Darnold were to go down, or his value just seems bulletproof as long as he stays on the field. Now, if he gets hurt again this year, it's kind of like Saquon Barkley, right? If he gets hurt again this year, now the conversation could change about McCaffrey a little bit. But I'll end this conversation about McCaffrey just saying this, Cecil. I want to, again, put it out there. The first person to report that Christian McCaffrey could go as high as, was it number 8?
Number 8, Carolina.
To Carolina was one Cecil Lammey.
In February of that year.
Yeah.
All right. And Andrew brings up his pedigree parents. Do you know Lisa McCaffrey? She's incredible, and Ed's awesome as well. Mm-hmm. Lisa did a show for us on ESPN Denver under an alias.
Ooh.
Because she didn't want people to know it was Lisa McCaffrey. It was like Angel and somebody, and I can't remember her co-host's name, but Angel and something else.
Yeah.
And she was really good on there. So very good athlete and very good personality. Great radio voice too.
It's kind of like in Space Jam when Michael Jordan just wanted people to tell him the truth about how he was playing baseball. He didn't want to talk to him like he was Michael Jordan. You know?
Right. And the secret sauce is just water.
It's just water.
But
that's the secret.
Water's alive. Thank your water before you drink it. Let's get real crunchy on this show. Chuba Hubbard. I so wish it was Chuba. But Chuba is the preseason watch list. So, yeah, okay, Rodney Smith and Rod Smith. Trenton Cannon's still kicking around there in the league as well. He's got some speed, but anytime he's got an opportunity, hasn't looked good. Chuba Hubbard's the one I'm watching behind CMC. He'll be the Mike Davis in case of disaster.
Yeah, exactly. You get to your late round picks. You want to take running backs that have that injury upside, and Mike Davis showed it last year. And we'll see. Maybe Mike Davis will just turn out to be really good in Atlanta, and we'll say, no, it wasn't just backing up McCaffrey. It was being Mike Davis. But at least until we know otherwise, you're interested in who the backup is. It should be Hubbard. Again, the famous story is Matt Rule's wife blowing up his phone on draft day. You got to take him because he lit up Baylor. Hubbard.
Where they don't play defense.
Right. What would you say? Like Hubbard's the kind of running back. He's got great acceleration. So with enough lateral agility, like create a lane for himself, he can be a big play player. But they still have Rodney Smith. They still have Reggie Bonnett. I'm going to see who's the number 3, or even if they challenge for the number 2. We like to pencil these rookies into these roles, especially at running back, though. You have to be assignment sound. You have to earn the coach's trust. You have to stay healthy. So you want to know who's behind him, because Bonifant especially he's had a few plays here and there. He's had his moments. Rodney Smith was getting some work last year with this team. So there's something to monitor here just because of the value that Mike Davis showed this role can have.
Yeah, preseason watch list for a reason, and footballguys.com for a reason. Well, hey, check out our Football Guys daily newsletter every morning, hot and fresh right to your inbox. The top stories from around the NFL with commentary by me, Sigmund, Joe Bryant. So check us out. Dip your toe with us at footballguys.com. We appreciate it. You want to support the show, go to footballguys.com and initially sign up for that free daily newsletter, and then you can get that news and you can have a life, because we don't. We're footballguys.com. Let's get to the wide receivers, and that includes Robbie Anderson. Reunited, and it feels so good, Bloom?
Yes, and that's it, right? I think that we just haven't taken enough note of this, that Robbie Anderson, if there was anything good about Sam Darnold's stint with the Jets, a lot of it was his throws downfield to Robbie Anderson, right? I mean, look, if we can go back to Darnold's just omnipresent in this episode, because so much hinges on Darnold. And see, I don't remember specifically if you were a big fan of Darnold or not. Darnold was one of those quarterbacks where there wasn't necessarily a lot of people willing to go to the mat and say he should be the clear number 1 quarterback, but there wasn't like Josh Allen, like people writing him off either. There's a lot of in-between takes on him. But what you liked about Darnold was a little bit of, a Ben Roethlisberger, Dante Culpepper kind of approach to the game, where he's willing to like hang in tight quarters, extend.
Well, that's
plays.
why he gets banged up, is because he doesn't want to, he doesn't want to let his teammates down. Right. That's a good thing. That's a positive.
He's got a lot of fight, and he wants to make big plays. Like, he's still thinking big play whenever there's bullets flying around him. And Robbie Anderson, at times, we can go back, and there was a stretch in fantasy football, Cecil, it wasn't quite Billy Volek and Drew Bennett, but there was a stretch when Darnold and Anderson were hooking up deep regularly in a way that said, you'll take the chance. And you wanted Anderson, previously unheralded player. And so that reunion is important. Now, you can get Anderson, and you can almost always get him in the 6th round, maybe in the 7th even, or 8th. And you have him next to DJ Moore. And DJ Moore, certainly, if you watch DJ Moore's best plays, you think he could easily be drafted up there in the 2nd round with all those other guys like Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf. And is Sam Darnold the quarterback to really feed him to that level? I don't know. But you see Moore in the 4th, Anderson in the 6th or 7th, and I think those should be closer, a lot closer. And that is basically my take on these top 2. But we also have the possibility again. So last year you had 3 with Samuel. Right. But was that because McCaffrey was out? Well, see, they've got a potential 3rd this year that might force the issue and say, even with McCaffrey, we're going to have 3.
Yeah, and that's Terrace Marshall. And that's because of that speed, ability to take the top off the defense, big playability abounds with this young man. And as you mentioned it, Sam Darnold will challenge things. Like, Sam Darnold isn't afraid. And the dirty secret in the NFL is about fit. As soon as he goes to Adam Gase, you're like, well, that's done. Yeah. That's over. Sorry. And now Matt Rule. So you follow up Adam Gase with Matt Rule. Isn't it kind of the same thing? But Terrace Marshall, he can make plays for Darnold, make him look good, regardless of what Rule is calling or not calling.
Right. See, so what quarterback would we want to pair up with Adam Gase? Like somebody who was lobotomized?
No, someone who just does something and he doesn't listen to him, like Peyton Manning.
Yeah, there you go. Somebody who just ignores him.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah.
Who is willing to ignore their coach and be great
Aaron
in
Rodgers,
the process?
it'd be perfect for Adam Gase.
That's a great takeaway quote right there. Terrace Marshall, one of those players, the talk of training camp, not quite to the same degree as Elijah Moore, but similarly, people are watching Marshall and saying he can play. And he maybe fell a little bit in the draft because of some injury concerns or durability concerns. Look, if you put on Marshall's best plays at LSU, he looks a lot like Justin Jefferson. A lot. Mm-hmm. And he's got that glide, speed, acceleration. He can go up and get it. He's a natural playmaker. And like you said, Sam Darnold would be willing to feed him. So, is that potentially a downside for Moore, Anderson? Maybe. Marshall absolutely should be on your 15th round and later list. Maybe he'll be going earlier than that by the time you're listening to this as he continues to generate more momentum. Is it a reason to like Darnold a little bit more when you have those three strong receivers and McCaffrey? Certainly we're interested to see what happens with this offense because as we let in with it, okay, Matt Rule, he's not quite staking his career on Sam Darnold, but at the same time, this owner can start to get impatient if this team stays stuck and having these targets. There's no excuses for Sam Darnold this year when you go back in the second round and you get Terrace Marshall and you restock this passing game.
No excuses. That sounds like a good bumper song to use. Either way, don't get me started on Alice in Chains. I want to talk about Shi Smith, dude. Mm-hmm, speaking of J.C. Horn, and by the way, speaking of, this seems like a Senior Bowl. You're going to get ripped listening to this show. It also seems like a dynasty take because I talked about Frank Darby with the Falcons. Shi Smith, not quite as good as Darby. Darby was the best player and the most consistent every day at the Senior Bowl. Shi Smith can make big plays. And Shi Smith, even though not the biggest guy, most imposing guy, will do whatever it takes to climb the ladder and go get the football. And that was evidenced the week of practice during the Senior Bowl. And again, teammates like a J.C. Horn say, don't sleep on this guy. Talked to James Palmer, who was at the pro day for those guys. And he was like, don't sleep on that guy. And I was like, sleep on him. I discovered him at the Senior Bowl. Well, I didn't, Bloom. But either way, Shi Smith is the player I want to talk about behind the big three.
Yeah, they take him with a 6th-round pick. I think he can be a slot receiver. Maybe slot receivers, slot-only types fall down in the draft, but that doesn't mean they can't play. Daz Newsome comes to mind also. Just because they're a third-day receiver, that doesn't mean they can't stick. Look at a lot of the best slot receivers in the NFL, unheralded, coming into the league. So you want to watch him, especially if there's any injury issues here. And then I got to mention David Moore, who got a contract. Before they drafted Marshall, Moore was set to be that number 3 receiver and maybe made you a little more skeptical. Like, yeah, it was probably just McCaffrey being out. Right. And that's why they had 3. Moore's not that compelling, although Moore made some high wire circus catches with Russell Wilson. Again, Sam Darnold, a guy will throw it up there and let this guy make a play. David Moore has made some plays in his career. He has good enough speed for a long frame guy to be a factor deep. So he isn't going to get a big opportunity because of Marshall, but he's still somebody that gives this team a playmaker that can come off the bench.
Sometimes we see flashes with teams, Bloom, and production. And when a guy goes to a new team, we go, all right, it's on you. Can you redo that? Can you rekindle that? And as we continue to feverishly wait for Ian Thomas to actually show up to the building, they went out and got Dan Arnold.
Right.
That's exciting.
Who's basically another big receiver, someone who can make some plays. And I can't remember who it was. I wish I could give credit to the person who said, Cecil, are we overlooking the Darnold to D Arnold connection here? It's just written in the stars now.
Right.
But it would be written in the stars if he could even get more than a target a game to the tight end position. It's still not going to be a featured position, although they gave him enough money that I think they see him as a role player. Again, red zone, there's some application there with Dan Arnold. And otherwise you yawn. There was a time, kind of like Chris Herndon, Ian Thomas in his rookie year. We thought maybe there was something there. No, probably not. We thought
this is the guy they get to groom to take over for Olsen.
Right.
And so we've just been waiting. He hasn't done anything.
Right. And then instead they go and they draft Tommy Tremble this year. And I think of like Will Dissly, where he's a blocking tight end, but he's shown enough, even though he hasn't been used often as a receiver, to say there could be something there as a receiver with a 3rd-round pick.
Right. And hell, even Stephen Sullivan, former receivers there. So they got a model, they got a mold. We'll see if anybody does anything, not for your redraft teams. Okay, that is a wrap for the Carolina Panthers on the preseason watch list. And well, next we're going to do something that I must do very soon, Bloom, hopefully. And that's head on down to New Orleans. Who wins the starting quarterback job and why it may not matter. That's next. I get a hankering for some Hurricanes. Well, actually one at Pat O'Brien's.
Yeah.
I don't think I could handle more than one.
Yeah. Right now is not the best time to come. I don't know if everyone's Jazz Fest was canceled. So
wait, I saw it wasn't I saw a video of some dude dancing. We were talking about dancing.
Yeah.
Because I think Greg Rosenthal retweeted it because somebody's like, it looks like Greg Rosenthal's losing his mind. And it was just some guy. It was like that SVP thing. Like it looked like Greg, right? Little baby face, dark hair. Although Greg's grown some facial hair. But still, like the dude was dancing. I thought that was a Jazz Fest. It wasn't a Jazz Fest?
Jazz Fest was moved from
Did
April
they start
to
it?
October.
And then
they moved it from April to October, and they just announced yesterday that they canceled it. And that's a big moneymaker for the city. Like it's part of it's like Christmas, it's one of the Christmases. So if they're canceling that, then
I feel like I was lied to then. Because that video, look at Greg's timeline. He retweeted it. But yeah, I thought that was like, I was going to talk to you like, oh, did you go to Jazz Fest? But I guess that wasn't live.
No.
Good thing we are live. All right, let's jump on board with those New Orleans Saints. We'll do that in 3, 2, 1. It's Taysom Hill versus Jameis Winston. Why that means Jameis Winston is going to win the quarterback job.
Right.
Bloom, let's talk about it and the impact that Taysom's still going to play, even if he doesn't win the job. But let's talk about the impact of the quarterback deal with New Orleans.
That's the story, right, Cease? It's just the times, and it's always been like this in New Orleans, I think. It's just the times, right? The dog, that this is fine dog with the room on fire, right? We're all familiar with this at this point. Like, it's just the times. It's the symbol of the times. See, they didn't tell us when that thing premiered, when it first debuted, that was actually going to be like the motif of our times. And that's kind of how it is with the Saints in this quarterback situation. And look, Drew Brees he wasn't old Drew Brees for sure. I mean, he was old Drew Brees. So, and I get it, at the end of the year, he was banged up, but he was a limiting factor on this offense to some extent because he couldn't throw downfield. But see, there's a whole other human element to this, right? Drew Brees, kind of like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, is just the kind of quarterback that changes how everybody carries themselves in the building, right? Is that fair?
Yeah.
There are some quarterbacks, Brady, Manning, I don't know if there's anyone else that comes to mind, that like the whole building changes because they're there. Is Drew Brees one of those guys? I think maybe. At least we have to be open to it. When your rudder is Jameis Winston instead, or your rudder is Taysom Hill, or really your rudder goes back to Sean Payton. It's what can Sean Payton do? But this is the whole story. So could this team and this offense really drop down a level? Because it wasn't so much what Drew Brees added on the field. It was just a Drew Brees-led offense. And what does this offense look like when he's not leading it? It could get better, right? Glass half full take here is that they have a great offensive line, and they have Sean Payton and Pete Carmichael. Here's your glass half empty take, though. Okay, you can only throw to Alvin Kamara so many times.
Right.
I mean, you're going to get him hurt, too.
Right. Freddie says there on Facebook, what's he going to get, 200 catches? Like,
right. And this could be an offense that sputters. This could be an offense that greatly underproduces expectations because we're used to this being a good fantasy offense that produces overachievers. Now, on the other side of things, they did lose Trey Hendrickson in free agency. They did lose Janoris Jenkins. Certainly, their defense, that's the other thing why you lower your expectation for this offense. What's the answer here? What do they do when Teddy Bridgewater's out there? Defense. Look, it's your turn, defense. Right. And the defense rose to the occasion. Now, can they do that this year? Well, that tells me a more conservative offense. And can they do that with some of these personnel losses? we'll see. They have some weak spots out there, kind of like the Steelers defense, where they can make plays. They can be a pressure defense, but they can also have some weak links that you attack. So you look at this whole picture. I think that when we look at the quarterbacks, obviously Taysom Hill, if he's the starting quarterback, will have fantasy value. He's just like Jalen Hurts, right? Jalen Hurts will kind of be that guy to be like any running quarterback, any quarterback that's going to pull the ball down and run 8, 10, 12 times a game with some athleticism and speed is going to be a low-end quarterback one in fantasy football. And maybe in the offseason we can have a referendum of like, that's something that need to be fixed about fantasy football. Is that something that is like a flaw?
It's definitely a glitch in the system.
Yes.
If you know how to game the system, you know that about a running quarterback. Doesn't matter if he can't throw. Tim Tebow.
Right. Tim Tebow was a top 10 fantasy
Taysom Hill's a what the heck flex even if he doesn't start. And Bloom, here's the thing. Both of them are going to play this year. And both of them are going to start this year. Jameis is going to start 17 games. Do we really think Jameis Winston is going to start 17 games?
Right.
Like Taysom's going to get his. So again, further complications.
Hill is the one that has some payoff for fantasy football. Winston doesn't really have payoff because if Winston's the starter, Hill's going to still get his snaps as the special gadget play quarterback. And again, I'll just say this for the 17th time on this show, that the reason you have to like Winston in this battle, other than Winston having so much more experience playing quarterback in the NFL, is that Hill is not just competing against Winston, he's competing against Winston plus the change-up value of the plays he's in on. If he's the quarterback, like you put the defense in fire drill mode whenever Hill's out there, you lose that competitive advantage if Hill is always out there. And that's why I think it'll be Winston. I think that Peyton's always had signs on, like, I can fix what's wrong with Winston. I can, guide his play in a way, give him fewer choices, I think,
make him take the short stuff.
Right. And we'll see if Winston is successful. Winston obviously is a good enough passer to support the value of the players in this offense. And where it comes in, I think, in fantasy, and, we can talk about Ian Book. Ian Book, Peyton's latest, like, I can make him a Tony Romo or something like that.
Right.
But really what you turn the page to is like Hill versus Winston may be important for Alvin Kamara. Is Hill going to run more often? He's going to take the check down. Winston is going to play more in structure that way and potentially feed Kamara. But, leading in all the way full circle, is this potentially going to be a disaster? Could it affect Alvin Kamara? Could it make him skyrocket? When you're on the clock, number 3, number 4, number 5, you're going to have to think about these things.
Yeah, and I'll take that chance on Kamara that it would skyrocket, that he may finish the season as the number 1 running back in fantasy football. Because it'd be there for him. And if you go disaster mode, right? They're going to stack the box of stuff to run. Well, I don't really worry about Kamara as a runner. I know that he can slash and gash and all that kind of good stuff. But as a receiver, when he's fed all those dump offs from Jameis or Taysom, like, yes, please. So count me on the side of I'm taking Kamara early. I'm not having any hesitation. You mentioned a more conservative offense, Bloom. Does that mean more Latavius Murray? Like trying to soften people up and then using Kamara more as a slot receiver. Because again, we're going to get to the receivers. Unless they trade for Tim Patrick, they didn't have much. So let's talk about more conservative, what that means for Kamara and potentially Latavius Murray.
Yeah, and see, we will start out, one of the little skeleton keys to this is that they signed Devontae Freeman. Because
and he's been out there. Read Jeff Duncan's stuff. By the way, good to have Jeff back on the beat.
Yeah.
And Freeman's been out there while Kamara's been a receiver.
Yeah. So what are we seeing here? Because there's another story here brewing. It's Michael Thomas and the hole that leaves in this offense, which again we're used to. But what does that change when this team? I mean, let's be fair. I'm not trying to fast forward to the Michael Thomas take because there's a whole fantasy football discussion there, but that this is Michael Thomas's last year with this team. Yeah. This is last year with the team. I mean, he may even get traded before he plays for them this year, for all I know. I think that the relationship has irreconcilable differences at this point. So how do you game plan going into the season to keep this ship going? And it is a lot of Alvin Kamara as a receiver. So that then opens the door for Latavius Murray to be, kind of play almost more like a Josh Jacobs kind of role for this offense. And remember, if you do think Hill is going to win this job, Murray had his highest snap counts of the season when Hill was the quarterback. So that's another thing that makes Murray a little more interesting here, not just in case of a Kamara injury. Although, of course, if Kamara is out there and they're putting a heavy load on him in this offense, and the way he plays, he doesn't back down. There's no back down in him. That increases the chances of Murray. Remember, automatic running back 1, top 10 running back 1 when Kamara's out. And so it's not so much that Freeman has standalone fantasy value. And by the way, Cecil, again, we let this off in Atlanta, the Atlanta-New Orleans rivalry. Freeman's down in New Orleans now. But Freeman's signing is a hint maybe at their intentions and how to analyze this backfield.
And analyzing the backfield behind those guys, Dwayne Washington, Tony Jones, he was at the Shrine game. There's your Shrine game reference for these shows. So, yeah. I like Tony Jones. I thought he was a hard charger. Maybe not a lot of juice, Bloom, but hard charger, natural kid. I'll watch him.
Yeah, and without Ty Montgomery, that's maybe the headline to me is Ty Montgomery is more of a receiver again, just in time. Right. So he's not necessarily in that picture. Dwayne Washington, big, has some straight line speed, some special teams prowess. We turn the page to the wide receiver season. Now we can really take on what is there when there's no Michael Thomas.
When there is no Michael Thomas, and the reasons why are very interesting. Speaking of very interesting, if you're into rankings and watching shows like this one, then you're a serious fantasy player. But consistently winning at fantasy football is challenging, and it takes time. You need a Footballguys premium subscription that gives you an edge and helps make winning decisions in less time. Just head to footballguys.com, click the orange button in the right hand that says join now. We'll do the work, you do the winning. It's footballguys.com. And hey, you want to support the show? Best way to do that is sign up for Footballguys premium subscription, and we appreciate all of you. Back to Jeff Duncan, Bloom.
Yeah.
Audible alum, by the way.
Yeah.
Jeff actually left the Times-Picayune. I didn't know that. My bad. But he's recently back. He's on the Saints beat, and he wrote a piece about Michael Thomas and why the delay of surgery. Did you read that piece, Bloom?
No, I didn't. I mean,
Michael Thomas wouldn't answer
ghosted
his phone.
them. Yeah.
He ghosted his team. So you say this is the last year of Michael Thomas being in New Orleans. I say, yep. He wouldn't even answer his phone when they were checking in because it was supposedly like, let's let it heal on its own, but we'll check in with you and we'll see if surgery's needed. And then he shows back up and they're like, oh my God, this didn't heal the way we wanted. He thought he was healing fine. So the Michael Thomas thing, again, I've put a bug in the ear around New Orleans or whatever I got to say that Tim Patrick needs to be traded for. Outside of that, though, this is looking very dire for the Saints without Michael Thomas for what? Half the year, all the year?
Right. What are you going to get when he comes back and so on? And we could do a Dr. Gene take here about these kinds of ankle surgeries are tricky when you're coming back from them. Is he even going to be 100% this year and so on? But then there's also the erratic nature of this relationship and this player at this point. Although he did have a few decent games. He had a decent game or two with Taysom Hill at quarterback last year, like a 9 for 100 kind of game. Still, I'm probably not taking Michael Thomas in my draft. I think that you have and again, depth of roster matters. If you only have 5 bench spots, that really increases the cost of carrying Michael Thomas while you're waiting for him to come back. If you have 10 bench spots, then it's more tolerable to carry him. But see, so I'm still taking Elijah Moore and Darnell Mooney and Mecole Hardman, like all of your favorite, after you get your wide receiver starters filled out, your upside swinging for the fences guys. And I guess there is a swing for the fence element to Michael Thomas, but there is that extra cost of waiting for the reveal. And he's just not inspiring confidence right now. So that's the Michael Thomas take, but see, there's another layer to this of how much confidence do we have in the players behind Michael Thomas, because we could be looking at kind of a New England 2020 kind of situation where if you don't have players that can challenge downfield and you allow a defense to go in hyper aggressive mode because they just don't honor the pass, then you are in trouble. I don't care how good your offensive line is. You're in trouble in the NFL. So can these other guys without Michael Thomas out there be a credible group, and we can even throw Adam Troutman in there, we'll get to him, we get to the tight ends, enough to keep this offense viable?
Yeah, and the Troutman, hopefuls are like, oh man, because without Thomas, they'll change the way they cover things. They've waited for Traquan Smith forever. I've said that on this show. There's people on that staff that love Traquan Smith when he was a rookie, and we're waiting.
Yeah.
Like, we're still waiting. We've seen it. We've seen glimpses, but Bloom, it's been like, what, 1 or 2 games in 3 years, whatever the number is. Like, it's not enough, certainly. Ty Montgomery is a receiver now. It's not. They switched him over. Deontay Harris, Marcus Callaway. Let's talk about Chris Hogan's back playing. Yeah, whatever. Like,
back in the
oh my
lacrosse
God,
league.
this is why they need to trade for Tim Patrick.
Right.
I mean, just go do it now.
Yeah. I will say this. Let's lead with the good news. Here's the good news. Marquez Callaway. Put him on your late round target list right now. 12th round, 13th round. Start thinking about this dude. And this is another reason why, Cease, that we're recording preseason watch list now with a week plus of camp. We can talk about these players a little differently than if we were talking about them in July and we were talking about this wide range of outcomes, right?
Right.
Because the Michael Thomas thing happens. Traquan Smith's a little banged up. Deontay Harris has a legal thing. And he was a little bit banged up too. But here's the thing. Marquez Callaway is taking control like a number one receiver. I'm not saying he's going to be a number one receiver. I'm just saying that based on the reports from camp, he is taking that opportunity. See, there's this layer to all these training camps that is a massive human drama. As things happen, some of these players know they can alter their destiny with the opportunity they have. And I think Marcus Callaway is doing that to the fullest extent he can. And remember, last year, as an undrafted rookie, when he got in, he popped, and then he got hurt. And then he didn't have a chance to regenerate that momentum. So don't be surprised if he's one of those free receivers basically in your draft that you can plug in maybe every week, because you got Traquan Smith, who has a downfield game. Physically, he can strike a similar profile to Michael Thomas at times, but he's going to be drawing number one corners outside. I just think that doesn't sound like a recipe.
That means Callaway.
Yeah, right. And then what else you have? You have Deontay Harris. He's more of a water bug type, some speed, some acceleration. They'll use him. Jakeem Grant. They'll use him, but he's not necessarily going to generate fantasy value. He will take up some of the touches. He will take up some of the play designs. You mentioned Chris Hogan back. They've got Quan Baker, who they took late. They've got Lil Jordan Humphrey. I got Chappelle season 1 always. See, there's like some percentage of the real estate in my head that is always going to be taken up by Chappelle season 1. So there's opportunity here, but the fact that there's opportunity here may be a bad sign for this offense. That being said, Marquez Callaway can still be good enough to produce as the offense is deteriorating.
Yeah, there's opportunity to be the number one receiver. Like opportunity as like a fourth guy or fifth guy,
right.
Like, and we'll watch it, preseason watch list, and put a pin in it and wait, and then 2 years this guy, like these guys have to do it now. Sorry. Let's talk about tight ends and people high on Adam Troutman. That's fine. Nick Vinette's there. He'll do nothing. Juwan Johnson now playing tight end. That's the more interesting name for me, Bloom. Juwan, a player I saw down at the Shrine game. So let's discuss this tight end situation. And remember, Jameis Winston, not only with the Buccaneers, but even back at Florida State, fed the tight end more than anybody. So is it real with Troutman?
It could be. He's a small school pick, 3rd round tight end. Hey, Jimmy Graham was a similar projection pick. When they took Jimmy Graham in the 3rd round, he was just as much of a projection, like an NBA draft kind of pick, where you're just saying, maybe we can turn him into this. And that's what you're looking at with Troutman, coming from a small school, Dayton, right? First one to get drafted from Dayton. Chris Allen, Footballguys staffer, the connection to Dayton. I met up with Gene Bramwell in Dayton. That's where he went to college. Anyway, Troutman has those physical tools. Look, when we see a small school prospect in the draft, what we want to see is when we turn on that small school tape, he looks like the best football player on the field, almost like it's unfair, like a varsity player playing against the JV. That's what he looked like. Can that translate? I mean, this is a big opportunity, but also we see how these players early in their career, like it's almost like they get enough opportunity to see just where they will fail, the limits of what they can do. And Troutman's going to have that kind of opportunity. That's not always a good thing for fantasy football. And as you said, with Michael Thomas taking pressure away, taking coverage away in the middle of the field, it's harder for this offense to open up room for a player like Troutman to operate. So I'm still liking Irv Smith or Blake Jarwin better in that part of my draft as an upside number 2 tight end. But Troutman could hit because he has the physical goods and he'll have the opportunity.
All right. We rarely talk about kickers, but Ian's cat is a favorite. He wants us to talk about Lutz and the Lutz situation. I'm like, I don't pay attention to kickers, so
yeah,
it's on you.
Well, and by the way, footnote on Jawan Johnson, at one point in his college career was considered a potential first-round pick and part of that wide receiver to tight end conversion. Lutz is really important for the team. He's going to miss part of the season. Just came out today, core muscle, 8 weeks. But for a kicker, kickers are like finely tuned. So you don't totally know the time frame. And he's an important kicker for this team. And in fact, Cease, in this way that you look at the blueprint of this team and you think, kickers, they want to play defense games. They're going to play conservative, don't turn the ball over offense. The kicker's going to be important, and it ain't easy to find a kicker. There are teams out there like the Jets, the Lions, the Titans, who probably are looking elsewhere for their kicker already. Like sometimes in training camp, you can just say, well, we got to find a kicker when the season starts. You maybe try to bring someone in, but you just wait to see who gets cut, basically. And now the Saints are in that same boat, except they have to bring in someone to get accustomed to being part of the special teams. So it's not a good situation for the Saints. Again, just fully making full circle. Like, this is fine. This is fine. No Jazz Fest. Now Will Lutz is hurt. This is fine.
This is fine. That is a wrap for the New Orleans Saints here on the preseason watch list. It's 32 episodes, 32 shows, 32 teams. And I totally screwed that up. It's live, everybody. Everyone, stay tuned. We have to talk about Tampa. They kept the band together, but is it like an Eagles Stadium tour Bloom, or is it like Fat Vince Neil running around trying to sing Girls, Girls, Girls? That's next.
The Eagles tour. I remember that tour, I think, was the first tour that hit $75 on a ticket, right? Mm-hmm. It was like, $75? Really? So that dates us, right?
Everything dates us.
That's true.
How many of our listeners are like, Motley Crue? Who the hell's that? Oh, that fat guy running around singing. Everyone makes fun of him.
Right.
That one cameo Vince Neil did where he's like, oh, girls, rock and roll, everybody, rock and feel good. Mm-hmm. Woo, happy birthday. Oh my God, it was so funny.
Once there was how will they interpret like hundreds of years from now, or thousands of years from now, when they study the culture of the late 20th century? How will they interpret hair metal? What will they see hair metal as like a symbol
of?
So masculine,
stuff
but
I'll save off there.
So masculine, but yet so much hair and makeup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Party on, dude. Okay, let's go. Tampa in 3, 2, 1. Could we just replay last year's show, Bloom? I mean, seriously, they kept the band together in Tampa. Tommy Terrific still playing like he was. So is this rinse repeat with almost every Buccaneers take?
Well, except last year at this time, Cease, we would have been saying maybe if Father Time isn't catching with Tom Brady, if he and Arians jive, if this offensive line is good, etc., then this could be interesting. Now we're on the other side of that. So what has happened since then? Tom Brady just basically did one of the most dominant things we've seen in any sport, right? Like this is a coda to a career. I'm trying to even think of an analogy, Cease. I don't know that there's anything else I can really pull out from another sport in my knowledge where a player, because it was a breakup, right? It was a public breakup, Brady and Belichick. And we see who's winning. We see not just who's winning, but, it wasn't the Belichick way, it was the Brady way and things like that. But now they have that confidence, right? Like they're the bully. And this team likes being the bully, right?
They enjoy that.
Yeah, they do. They relish it. Now they have that. Okay, again, Cease, let's go back to the heyday of the Brady-Belichick days, the Welker-Moss offenses, right? They don't care. They'll put 56 on you because they can, just to show you that they can. So that's why I think it's different potentially, Cease, is now this team knows, like they're the kick in the sand in the face on the beach in Tampa. They know right. They're the bully. And they're going for the jugular. I mean, how much fun is it when you're coming off a Super Bowl win and you just know it's Super Bowl or bust? Like we're going for it. We're going to just leave destruction in our wake. So for fantasy football, I'm wondering, is this one of your fantasy football juggernauts where everything associated? Because the other thing is, from the big picture view, there's just too many players, right? 3 running backs.
Right.
3 wide receivers, 2.5 tight ends. But then even if you look at their 4, 5, and 6 wide receivers, those are guys who can produce if they get an opportunity too. And they can be used in this offense. They can have dedicated roles. So there's a lot of players, a lot of mouths to get fed. But if the pot is big, everyone can get fed.
Yeah, there's something. I don't think YouTube or Joe will take issue with this. Maybe. I don't know. Hey, buddy, can you stop saying FU money on the show? But like when you get FU money, I don't have that. But I've heard my wealthy friends talk about that where like you just don't care. Like you're going to do what you do and you got FU money. So whatever. Everything's covered.
Yeah.
And does not feel like Tom Brady when he was booed at the Hall of Fame last night. And he was just like looking around like,
makes me more powerful.
Exactly.
It just makes me more powerful. I'm going to win number Jordan, 8, and you're going to hate it. You're going to hate it.
Jordan would make up stuff. You beat him in a game of dominoes or even make it close, and he'd like not talk to you for days, and then he'd make up stuff, and guys would be like, I never said that. And he's like, yeah, you did. Yeah. So Brady's got that Jordan mentality. Like, it's just, okay, give him more fuel. Great. You just won Tampa another Super Bowl. Thanks, Hall of Fame.
Yeah, you don't have to make it up. He doesn't make it up. Although, again, since it's Space Jam Day, I think it's fascinating that they put Jordan's gambling in the film as the weakness, as the way to trap him. Like Looney Tunes even know if you need to trap Michael Jordan, use him, get him when he's betting. Jordan agreed to that. Jordan agreed to that script and being in that movie.
I should have worn my Toon Squad jersey. I do have one.
Oh, you have a Toon Squad jersey.
Yeah,
that is sweet. Look, if you want some more concrete reasons, and the bottom line here, I like taking a top 5 quarterback, or really quarterback 4 or 5. I like taking Russell Wilson. There's a lot of potential right answers at quarterback this year, and Tom Brady is one of them because his knee has been surgically corrected now, so that could help him. He's accustomed to these teammates. Remember, they didn't really have a full offseason to install what he's doing. So again, it's not just confidence. It's not just coming off of a successful conquest. It's also that everybody's settled in and they're ready to blitzkrieg the opponents.
Let's do it. Preseason watch list is perfect for Kyle Trask.
Yeah.
The guy that they draft to groom behind Brady. Brady even saying like, great, love it. You know, this is no Jordan Love situation. Obviously, Trask not a first rounder, but like some people were talking about him. I was actually disappointed when Trask was not at the Senior Bowl because of a little ankle thing. I think he was there, Bloom, but he didn't participate. Obviously, it was the Mac Jones show. But Trask certainly flat-footed as a passer. But can rocket it all over the field. We'll see how he develops, and it's preseason watch list. It's perfect for a guy like him.
Yeah, he's a competitor. I'm tripping over my words here because it's one of those football cliches. A gamer,
right?
Kyle Trask. You know, he's a gamer. Doesn't have the first round tools, or he would have been a first rounder. It's kind of self-evident. But this is one of those situations where coming off a Super Bowl, there's a certain connotation that comes with drafting 32nd. And what it means is you kind of shop for luxury items or plan for the future. You know, Tom Brady eventually is going to stop playing, and Kyle Trask, they think, can develop him on more of a slow track and at least have somebody to be, at worst, a caretaker, because this is not a team that plans on being in the top 10 or even the top half of the first round for a while. So we will see that, and that's much more interesting than Blaine Gabbert.
Much more interesting. And let's get to the running backs because there's Fournette, there's Ronald Jones, there's Gio Bernard now. Bernard's the new guy, so I guess that's the most interesting.
Right.
And again, I feel like, is it rinse repeat for this now with more Gio?
Yes. I think that leading with Gio is the right way to go about this. So from a fantasy football perspective, this is fascinating because let's face it, Cease, I have Ronald Jones 9th round, 10th round, Leonard Fournette 9th round, 10th round, Bernard's like 14th, 15th round.
He's his James White.
Right. And they're attached to a potential juggernaut offense. How often can you get running backs in what might be the best fantasy offense in the whole league that will have at least some role? And the good thing by having some role is that you can grow that into more, right? Production, execution creates more. So this can be very, very fluid because none of these backs, I mean, Bernard hasn't had a chance yet. Jones and Fournette didn't exactly seize the jobs last year. In fact, Fournette played himself into being a healthy scratch so they could have playoff Lenny. Okay, that's great. Playoff Lenny doesn't help us in our fantasy leagues. All right. So what's going to happen here? I mean, I can make a case for any of these three guys. I can make a case for Jones because he's probably the guy they look at as adding the most touches on those early down carries, and he has the potential to hit a home run, 70-yard type touchdown run. But you don't like Jones or Fournette as much because that third down role, Shady McCoy was basically washed up last year. So that third down roll, now that Bernard's there, takes the edge off of their upside. But yet still, if one of Jones or Fournette can control most of the early down work, because again, juggernaut offense. Look, when Fournette was a healthy scratch last year, or Fournette was out, Jones was a solid play. And likewise, if Jones was to miss time like he did, or he was slowed down in the playoffs, Fournette becomes a solid play. So there's still value there, but you need one of them to either truly emerge or the other one to step aside. And then enter Giovanni Bernard. Because, like you said, James White. And James White has had like at least bye week injuries, emergencies, like
flex appeal, PPR leagues. Yeah.
Right. I mean, he's going to give you 3-4 catches, that role for Tom Brady. He's going to give you 3-4 catches a game, and he's going to be potentially involved in the red zone offense, has some touchdown upside. But why can't Giovanni Bernard be more than James White? Why can't he? Again, Ronald Jones.
He's a better runner.
Yeah, exactly. Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette are the kinds of players who don't necessarily create and hold on to trust from their coaches. Johnny Bernard is. I mean, he's a quarterback's best friend in terms of the way he plays in the backfield. He's going to be in the 2-minute drill. He's going to be in on passing downs. But if he's consistently executing, why can't he do more early downs? So every time I look at this piece, I wonder, why isn't Giovanni Bernard going around the same time as Jones and Fournette? Because he has at least as much value to start the season and as much potential for his value to grow.
Yeah, maybe more than those other two. And what I could see happening, Bloom, and leave this to Tommy Brady, right? Leave this to Bruce Arians, I should say. BA, what's up? Section off the season. It's like they say Fournette, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's Gio's part of the season.
Right.
Where he's the featured back. Now it's Ronald Jones part of the season.
Right.
Like, I could see these guys giving them like a 4 or 5 game stretch each as the lead back. So if you can catch that stretch, remember windows. We're trying to capture windows. I want that Gio Bernard window whenever it is. So if you got a deep enough bench, last pick, whatever. I'm not going to take a kicker. I'm going to take Gio Bernard.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take a second defense. I'm going to take Gio Bernard. Yeah, sounds good. Behind him, poor Keyshawn Vaughn. And poor CJ Prosise. Somewhere he should be like Golden Tate. Somewhere he should be like J.D. McKissick. And somewhere, I think on Madden 15, I still have my 99 CJ Prosise card. So there you go, Bloom. Hot and mutt talk today.
Yeah, just wasn't able to stay healthy. We never got to see what Precise could do. Vaughn, he'll probably be a healthy scratch, and that's just because the team is in a win now window. There's a chance for him maybe in the preseason to show that he should be more. But if you think the running back group is deep, wait till you hear about the wide receivers.
Wait till you get to the wide receivers, which go like 8 deep.
Yeah.
Wait till you check out footballguys.com. And one, we love of the show, preseason watch list heating up, social networking's all abuzz with preseason watch list. And thank you guys. We appreciate you. We love you. If you want to support the show, the best way to do that, Football Guys premium subscription, really good price, really great product. Obviously, we've both been Football Guys, me since 2005, Bloom since 2006, and that's on staff. Right. We were Football Guys way before that as well. So we just appreciate you. If you can get that Football Guys premium subscription, it's the best way to support the show and show your love for the Audible. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
What a trio, man. What a trio.
Yeah. And this puts them in that elite company of Dallas, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, where you have a pass offense that, at least according to ADP, can support 3 every week, or at the very least fantasy relevant players. You have Evans and Godwin. They're going to go maybe in the late 3rd at the earliest, probably in the 4th, may still be there in the 5th. And that makes it easier to take at least one pick early on that's not a wide receiver, if not more. If not, wait, and one of them is your first pick at wide receiver. If I have to roll Evans or Godwin out as my number 1 receiver, I'm okay with that because I've pocketed advantages elsewhere if they're my number 1 receiver. And Godwin really started to riff with Brady as the season went on. He's in his franchise tag year. He's more of a high floor play here, more likely to get a steadier, remember, and there's a lot of mouths to feed here, but this could be a foot on the throat kind of offense also. So Godwin, it could be easily regular occurrences around 5 for 70, but occasionally gives you those touchdown games, maybe even a bigger game if there's a back and forth kind of shootout. Evans, his upside is in the touchdowns, and he had 13 last year. So you're not worried about that. You're going to have some games where he doesn't score a touchdown, and maybe he's like a 2 for 39. Maybe there'll be a few floor games, but he'll give you some multi-touchdown games. As far as Evans versus Godwin, again, if he's your first wide receiver, maybe it's more Godwin because he's going to be more consistent. If your second or third, especially your third wide receiver, maybe it's Evans because it gives you that knockout punch, more of that upside. I think they're roughly the same value in fantasy football, just slightly different outlooks. And then you get to Antonio Brown. Now, Antonio Brown, here's what's interesting, Cecil. He seems grateful. He seems like he's past that turbulent period. I mean, if you look at how reality has kind of cooperated with him, I would hope so. He was a solid high floor play last year once he got with the team, but he was not a big play until week 17. I don't know how valid that is. And again, where's Antonio Brown going to go in your draft? Around some of your upside plays, your Hardman, Mooney types, Elijah Moore, upside plays, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith. So I might be more of an upside than a floor, but wow, what a floor Antonio Brown provides. And again, when we go beyond that, Cease, you could have 2 or 3 wide receiver injuries, and this offense could still be in pretty good hands.
And they'd still be chugging along because imagine a world. It sounds like movie trailer guy, right? In a world where Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are sent off to play Space Jam for football.
Right. Someone needs to get on that.
Imagine if it was, Scotty Miller, Tyler Johnson, and Jalen Darden.
You're fine.
Imagine if those were their 3 wide receivers.
You're fine.
It's not Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown. It's not that. I'm not saying that. But Miller is that do everything slot. Johnson with that big size speed combination. Darden with his ball tracking ability. I love that trio. And these are guys, Darden especially, he'll sneak on to the end of the roster.
Yeah. And that's why these are names you just need to know. Okay. First, you have Scotty Miller. Before Antonio Brown came back, Scotty Miller was a guy that I was trying to tuck away on best ball teams. Remember in that Green Bay game, he had that long touchdown that really helped tilt things in their favor. He's the vertical slot. I mean, not the slot. I'm sorry. He's the vertical receiver, actually more of an outside receiver than a slot with his speed. Just think John Brown. This is Bruce Arians' second latest, because we're going to get to Jalen Darden. That receiver who was unheralded, not necessarily a big receiver, but a speedy receiver and a skilled receiver. And Scotty Miller has done that. And if an outside receiver goes down, and Evans or Antonio Brown, we're interested in Miller. Now, why do we like Chris Godwin? Maybe I like Chris Godwin a little more than Mike Evans. Is that Godwin gets that classic Bruce Arians slot receiver role. He's perfect for it. Well, Tyler Johnson would get that if Godwin were to go down. Now, on the other hand, Tyler Johnson is likely to be a healthy scratch because he's not going to contribute on special teams like Darden does. So you may see Tyler Johnson be in the very strange fantasy football position of not even worth carrying on a roster because he's not even active. But if the player ahead of him goes down on the depth chart, he's an instant start.
Waiver wire speed dial.
Right. And then there's Darden. Darden's been one of the stories of camp. Darden is another player, and again, coming from North Texas, a very dynamic player with the ball in his hands, the phone booth quicks, the acceleration, and he's showing up in camp. He already was probably going to be the 5th receiver along with some special teams because even if Johnson's more experienced than him, he's going to be active on game days because he can contribute on special teams. And he's the kind of player that he just may crash the party. He may force them into giving him touches. Now, that doesn't necessarily equal fantasy value this year, but he was very unheralded going very late. I have him on a bunch of my dynasty teams because he was just still there the 4th round, 5th round of rookie drafts. I got to take him.
Yeah.
Because he just wasn't being given a lot of credit, and you're seeing him start to take off. He is absolutely one of our biggest need to watch preseason players.
He's like the Elijah Moore of the Buccaneers.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and let's look at, here's how you could consider Justin Watson. He's on the pup list, but still, here's how you should consider Jaden Mickens or any of these other guys. John Franklin also on the pup list. These are most teams, 5th wide receivers. So if I'm New Orleans, Bloom, here's your pro scout coming through again. They're going to cut Cyril Grayson. So scoop him up because these guys, we're going to talk about the 9th Buccaneers receiver, that's normally like a regular team's like 5th receiver. So these guys aren't going to make the team, but it's preseason watch list. I want to see what they can do.
Yeah, and that's the thing about this roster, right? I mean, it is a it's going to really test this because on paper, Cease, if you just were dispassionate and you thought the way this team peaked and how they brought everybody back, you have your first round pick Joe Tryon, who can be an excellent situational pass rusher right away. They're trying to find ways he can contribute on special teams to get a little more value out of him with their first round pick. That should show you where this roster is at in general. I mean, it's stunning what this team has been able to do. And then, like you said, you start to get Cyril Grayson continues to hang around with his track speed. That is absolutely a name that we need to know. It's nice to see Jaden Mickens get a ring. Anytime you played for the Jags, and you get a ring, something like Angel gets their wings or something like that.
All right, Zuzu's pedals. Let's get to the tight ends where Zuzu's pedals abound. That doesn't make any sense. Rob Gronkowski, OJ Howard, Cameron Brate. There's your 2.5 tight ends, Bloom. But it's 2.5 tight ends with, again, bands together. We know what they can do, and let's just watch them go.
Yeah, and it's tough for them to have sustained fantasy value. And because it's a potential juggernaut offense, look, at tight end, there's going to be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams in your fantasy league that will just be thrilled if they get a touchdown from their tight end, even if it's just the only catch he has that week. That's a fine week at tight end. So you can say that about Howard and Gronk. In any given week, they can catch you a touchdown in this offense. Now, can Howard have the same role he had early last year before he got hurt and have 3 or 4 catches a game to give you a safer floor? So you can weather the games where it's not really a Howard game. Again, because you have so many viable targets in this pass offense, but you also have the potential for this pass offense to really take off this year. So I think Howard should go ahead of Gronkowski. I mean, we have the Achilles for him to come back from, but he was going to have a bigger role than Gronk to open the season. And I just think that they know that the role they have Gronkowski in is how to maximize his value for this team, even if it doesn't maximize his fantasy value. And even after Howard went down last year, was Gronk just back to put him in your lineup every week? No. He had some weeks that he was good, and certainly he'll be good enough if Howard goes down again, or Howard just isn't his old self, to have some marginal fantasy value. And then there's Brate, who easily, there's some teams that probably use him. We talk about Zach Ertz and the trade for Zach Ertz. I mean, maybe that's an alternative. They restructured his deal, so he's getting less. He's probably sticking with the team. Why wouldn't you want to stay with the Bucs right now? Why would you want to play elsewhere?
Right.
So, in some ways it pains me to say it, but this is potentially a master class in domination, and we are going to get to see them face the Dallas Cowboys to open the season. Oh boy, Atlanta. And this is what's great, Cease, and we can end the NFC South thinking about it like this. It's just every game with this team is must-see TV, right? Dallas, Atlanta, Rams, New England, Miami, Philadelphia, Chicago, New Orleans, Washington, Giants, Indy, Atlanta again. See, these are, start all of your Bucs when they face Atlanta, right? Even in this fantasy football playoffs, you've got Carolina and the Jets. Ooh. So Tampa could end up being one of the keys to winning your league, having a piece of this offense.
By the way, friend of the show, Jenna Lane from ESPN. Jen has been covering the Buccaneers for as long as we've been doing this show.
Yeah.
Tanner Hudson should become a, quote, viable regular season contributor, close quote, in 2021. I wrote about this on our newswire on Saturday, and you have to look at him. He's a converted quarterback wide receiver. Hudson has been turning heads in preseason before when that was a thing. Coming out of Southern Arkansas in 2018 as a UDFA, you've had a pin in those deep dynasties in Tanner Hudson. And I'm just saying, if Jen is reporting this from Bucs camp, I'm not taking Tanner Hudson. I'm not dumping him, right? Yeah. I'm going to hold on to him in those deep dynasty formats because maybe, just maybe, there's something there. And they trade Cameron Brate, something like that, Bloom. Now all of a sudden, Tanner Hudson's got a role.
And it just complicates the picture. What it shows really to me is that players are flourishing in their development in this organization right now.
Yes.
They're hitting their peaks. They're hitting their best case scenarios as players. It's a good place to be. Tampa has become a title town, man. Tampa across sports has become a champion, and it's been something to behold what this team has done, how they came together, and it's whether you like it or not. See, it's back to Space Jam, and Michael Jordan is a Space Jam Day on the Audible. It's something that you have to respect and maybe even admire in terms of the greatness, a true artist, again, a masterclass, what do they do for an encore?
It is the Audible, the preseason watch list. 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you want to know about. And screw it up that time. He's Sigmund Bloom. You follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. The show is at the Audible. And I'm at Cecil Lammey saying thanks. As always, we appreciate you all, each and every one of you. As always, do those YouTube things. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you never miss a vid. Thank you, Sasha. It's the Audible. Sigmund, Cecil, we're here for you. Stay tuned and stay frosty.